as I've now learned, it's got a pulse generator. So every 2 to 3 hours, you should, through this system here, be making LH and FSH. LH, precursor to testosterone, goes into the blood, goes to the testes, says make testosterone. And then also FSH for spermagenesis. So they travel down to the old testes there, testosterone and spermagenesis. Now, another thing that testosterone-free stuff will do is pack on the muscle when you get 3 things right. Thing number 1, that pulse generator has to be open, legends. So that free T comes in and hits in the muscle there and hits what's called a transcription factor, which is basically an androgen receptor. That goes to a promoter pathway into the nucleus of the DNA, hits specific genes that transcribe mRNA proteins. They come out to the ribosome of the muscle and build your muscle. So that's thing number 1. Thing number 2, to build muscle, is you have to have this complex on called mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin, or some people call it the mammalian target rapamycin. Number 2. And number 3, you got to be eating enough protein. And the system kind of says low protein. Well, lots of studies show that a low protein diet causes significant reductions in body weight. Well, damn, there goes your muscle mass. You just don't have enough building material to do shit. Then your testes, they take a hit. They actually shrink. Epidermis, similar vesicle weight. So your fertility starts to plummet. So does your testosterone, your FSH for spermagenesis. So if we want to be fully optimized, we have to think through this with a different lens than what the system has told us to do. So when I was going through my course in nutrition, a light bulb went off and they talked about stress in the body. And there's so many things that cause stress in the body. And I'm going to show you exactly what they are here today. But basically, where the blood flows, if you've got a lot of oxidative stress and inflammation, problem number 1 is you won't be making testosterone. And what little free T you've got left is aromatized estrogen. Now, we already know this. And that's a big problem to build muscle. So this oxidative stress causes a lot of blood stress. And here's another problem. When you're younger, you can have okay serum, but as we've seen with a lot of dudes, their free T, the stuff that we need to do work in the body, like to lower fear and anxiety, increase motivation, to build muscle, all those things that testosterone is famous for, it tanks. So this V8 engine inside us, she starts tapping out and we blame ourselves. So we've got to really pay attention to what's going on in our body. Our body is saying, dude, listen, there's something wrong, there's something off. How are we going to fix this problem? So what we've got to understand as the foundation of optimal, consistent testosterone serum and free T is that we have to make sure that the body is happy. And I will show you how to do that today. Now, one of the biggest problems is your blood labs. And I've spoken about this previously, and I'll have information about how to get this right. I'll unpack that as we progress. But a lot of people, when they go to their physician will say, listen, your inflammation looks okay. Now, according to Chris Masterjohn, who has a PhD in nutrition science, when you are between 1 and 3 on your CRP, high sensitive C-reactive protein, that will cause low-grade inflammation there, chronic inflammation. So all of this will show up in your life. Fatigue, lupus, cancer, arthritis, autoimmune, neurological disease, cardiovascular disease. So it's slowly making you less of a man over time. And another big problem that we also see, over 200 men now we've done blood labs with, and close to 90% have elevations in homocysteine. And physicians rarely check this at all. And a couple of my clients in Australia here, that their GPs have said, no, we're not testing that. Nope. And I can't understand why. Because it causes lesions in your artery wall and blockages. So it causes a lot of oxidative stress inflammation, just that one thing alone. So it's a twofold problem. You got oxidative stress here, reactive oxygen species, that's crushing your testosterone and limiting it, but it's also oxidizing your cholesterol. So you can't use it. As I learned from Dr. J, he did a 5-year PhD in hormones and cholesterol. When your cholesterol is oxidized, the LDL cholesterol, we can't use it. And cholesterol is turned into testosterone. And because it's small and dense and oxidized, what does it do? It crashes into your artery walls here. Foam and plaque builds up and you develop this plaque in the artery here, and you eventually get blockages. So this homocysteine is a pretty big problem. So you should get those checked, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. So what we want to do, legends, remember, we've got to stop all of this stuff from shutting down serum testosterone from being optimal. And also, we've got to consider free T and oxidative stress. Now, here's some of the research papers that shows that estrogen protects your heart and arteries from oxidative stress and inflammation, like TNF alpha here. So testosterone attenuates that inflammation by conversion into estradiol E2 by the aromatase enzyme in your endothelial. So your endothelial line your arteries there. And there's lots of things, and I'll reveal them towards the end, but like insulin will do it, too high, cortisol, foreign estrogen, xenos, your trigs in a blood lab, they're too high, your inflammation, and also estrogen itself. And then you've got oxidative stress doing this to your tissues, damaging your fucking tissues, man. Necrosis, lipid peroxidization, inflammation, cytokines, DNA damage, decreased hormonal production, DNA damage, and infertility and reproductive dysfunction. Research papers here, the protective effects of estrogen. So your free T takes a hit to protect the oxidative stress. Your free T takes a hit to protect you from heart disease. Now, just driving into homocysteine, look at what it also does. So when you've got elevations in homocysteine, I'll talk about where it should be in a moment. You've got erectile dysfunction playing out. So you're with your wife in the workbench there trying to make some kids, I guess, and it just doesn't work the way that it should. And that plays into your mindset, and you think, oh, geez, man, I'm getting a bit impotent here. Now, if your homocysteine's up, it can cause endothelial dysfunction and lower nitric oxide. But when it's all healthy, your androgen pathway here that makes, the pathway that makes testosterone, it's upregulated. But uric acid is a big one too. So you should get that checked in the lab. But your homocysteine, when she's up, it's pretty hard. And to make matters worse, homocysteine here, endothelial dysfunction, right? And that is causing atherosclerosis and heart disease. So you've got enos uncoupling, which means your nitric oxide will be down. You've got decreased non-enzymatic antioxidants. Then you've got impaired enzymatic antioxidants like glutathione, catalase, superoxide dismutase. They're all tanking going down. And then your moneymaker, homocysteine, is causing oxidative stress in your brain. So your earning potential comes down. Your working memory comes down. Your cognition comes down. Your brain fog goes up. And these toxic proteins like beta amyloid start to build up. And you've got tangles, neurofibril tangles as well. So pay attention to homocysteine because she's no joke. Now, according to the research, it's going to start homocysteine, diabetes, kidney disease, cardiovascular, migraines, cancer, bone, eye, cognitive decline, as we just saw, hearing loss, infertility, depression. Then the three big drivers, vitamin status, lifestyle, and genetic mutations. Now, when it comes to homocysteine, there's 22 genes related to having healthy homocysteine levels. And out of all of those genes, I've got 14 that aren't very good. So I've had to work very hard to have mine at optimal levels. So that begs the question, where should it be? Well, if you do get your homocysteine checked, they'll say 14.5 and below is okay. No, functional medicine says we need to do that. We need to have it in optimal range. So optimal range is between 5 and 7, right? Between 5 and 7, not goddamn 14, and at a max 9. And that can take some time. It took me a good amount of months to bring mine down to optimal, looking at all of this here. So just remember the old homocysteine here is a big risk factor: cardiovascular, your brain, your sensory, eye, hearing, your gonads for both men and women, endocrine, diabetes, your bone, and your kidneys, everything like that. So homocysteine is a big, big problem. Next problem that we see, and I'm going to give you all of those things that will cause this drop in testosterone serum and also free, is dysglycemia and insulin resistance. So a lot of this research is behind paywalls. Like I paid for this one, it was $60 there. Old insulin resistance, lipotoxicity, your adaptive immune system goes up, so you can get autoimmune issues like allergies, asthma. You can have things like atopic dermatitis, and then it's going to cause a lot of inflammation in the body. So you got dysbiosis in the gut, and I'll talk about that towards the end there. You got colorectal cancer, stomach cancer, chronic kidney disease, pancreatic cancer, breast cancer, myocardial infarction, which is heart disease, atherosclerosis, plaque in the arteries, heart failure, arrhythmias, and stroke. So we need to pay attention to this, but she's going to tank your testosterone. And that was me a while back now with insulin resistances, and this is me now without insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity. So this is pretty academic now. This is a pristine publication from Nature. And as you can see all around here, it's slowly driving all of those diseases, as I just mentioned. So with your heart, man, like, you know, we're told that cholesterol is going to destroy your heart. Well, maybe, just maybe, it's not the case. As we learned earlier there, Dr. J, 5-year PhD, cholesterol, it's oxidized small dense that's the problem, as I mentioned earlier there. And insulin resistance is a big driver of this oxidative stress inflammation. So what's going to happen is you got cardiomyopathy with an enlarged heart, atherosclerosis and hypertension, high blood pressure. And your fat cells are leaching out inflammation. They're just sick and tired of all this fat coming into their cells. Then you've got lipotoxicity in your muscles and glucose intolerance and type 2 diabetes. Now think about that. You've got fast twitch muscle fibers that help you lift heavy weights. And if you've got glucose intolerance, they can only use glucose, the fast twitch. So you're weaker when you have insulin resistance, and a lot of people do. Then your liver taps out, so you can't detox estrogens and heavy metals and all of those things. So you could get a fatty liver. And then your central nervous system, right? Your moneymaker, Alzheimer's, cognitive decline. And of course, a lot of cancers that we just mentioned there. Kidney disease, and if you're a lady, polycystic ovary syndrome. And to really emphasize this point, this is Dr. Mark Heyman, functional doctor. Listen.
Sure. We know clearly that pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, many of the common cancers, pancreatic cancer, are caused by something called insulin resistance, which is prediabetes or poor metabolic health. 93.2% of Americans are in poor metabolic health, meaning they have some form of prediabetes or insulin resistance. They have high blood sugar, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, they're overweight, or they've had a heart attack or stroke. And that poor metabolic health is driving all these conditions, whether it's cancer, heart disease, diabetes, dementia, depression, infertility, so many different things, even acne. Our food system is the biggest killer on the planet.
So basically, they're legends. Do you really think that cholesterol is the problem? Well, it certainly can be. I think, based on the research that I've listened to, it can certainly drive atherosclerosis and plaque building up in the artery if it's small, dense, and oxidized. But if it's healthy, I don't think we got much of a problem. What do you think? Drop a comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are. And then insulin resistance in your moneymaker, cognitive decline. So you've got Alzheimer's, cognitive impairment, and cerebral degradation. Now have a look here. This is a PET scan. This isn't our typical 82-year-old brain. It's literally rotting away the cortex there. I don't know about you, but this is what I want, a healthy 82-year-old brain. So the Western diet, man, she's got a lot to answer for, because it's going to cause that dyslipidemia. It's going to tank your testosterone and increase testosterone's conversion into estrogen through aromatization, oxidative stress, glucose intolerance, sperm quality down. So it's a big, big problem. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned from Dr. J is that when he did his 5-year PhD in cholesterol, he found a lot of studies that corroborated the fact that when you've got dysregulated blood sugar, then that's when you have a big problem. This study that you see on screen here is significant. 22-year study of non-diabetic men. And they found that if your fasting blood glucose is above 85 or even 87 there, and in Australia, that's 4.7, so it's a different measurement, blood measurement there, you have a significantly high mortality rate. And this is what Dr. J said to me on a group call. Check this out. Mainstream doctors say that 100 is okay, but it's really not, is it?
Oh, it's insane. It's completely insane. What they do in the medical system with sugar is they wait until you get full-blown diabetes before they like to complain about it, because that's when they can start selling drugs. It always goes back to the drug sales and how they're trying to manipulate things for that. But you don't want to wait until you get diabetes pay attention to your blood sugar. You want to be optimized, right? That's the whole goal in all of this.
Exactly, yeah. So we certainly want to make sure that we've got that blood sugar regulated, not dysregulated there. Here's another very interesting research paper adapted from O'Keefe in 2008. All that blood sugar there. And I've done a video on this previously, and I spoke a lot about Dr. James Antonio in that fantastic book, The Blood Sugar Fix, and that's where this came from. So what they showed that when you do a glucose tolerance test, 2-hour postprandial glucose load, that if your blood sugar comes back down to 87 and below, or 85, which is again for 4.7 in Australia and in the European, then you've got coronary artery regression. So this shit's starting to regress. However, when you start going above that, so you can kind of see where this study comes back into play, 22 years, we're talking 2,000 people, then you've got regression. So this shit's building up in your arteries there. And you can imagine when it starts getting in this range, that's pretty toxic. And what's also quite fascinating to me is that when scientists test out cholesterol models to induce oxidized cholesterol, so it becomes small and dense, guess what they use? Glucose-induced oxidative stress. So you can probably see how this is starting to affect you over time. And this oxidative stress is oxidizing your cholesterol. So, it's becoming small and dense. It's crashing into the artery walls there. The foam and plaque build up. But, what it also does, this is a LDL cholesterol there. It's only got one receptor. And this receptor here, it's called the ApoB100, and it gets taken off. So the body can't use it to make cholesterol and everything that cholesterol does in your body. So again, it just becomes smaller and denser, and it starts crashing into your artery walls there. So if you think through this with a logical mind, if you don't oxidize your cholesterol, I don't think cholesterol is going to be too damn harmful at all. Maybe, just maybe, it's all this oxidative stress that's in our blood and arteries. And as we can now start to piece together, your testosterone that is free is aromatized into estrogen, right? And we're shut down from making serum T and also free T. And the pulse generator, man, you're missing out on that pulse of free T every 2 to 3 hours. And here's everything also, incidentally, that's going to tank testosterone. I'll also talk about this thing here, which can increase testicular weight when you get this right. So the basic overview of the shutdown in testosterone is when estrogen or testosterone get too high. So when your estrogen comes up too high, even if your T is low, okay, we're shut down. So our testosterone might only be 300 or even 100 when you've got way too much estrogen in the system there. And of course, you've got chronic, which is, the CRP, like 1.7 is getting the chronic inflammation there. So the V8 labs, gents, that's the thing that you want to get so you can find out where you need to get your blood labs to ideal range. And then you've got stress, whether that's environmental stress from these chemicals and toxins and an inflammatory diet, and cortisol, okay? Then you've got low blood sugar. So when it comes crashing back down, you feel like shit, you've been shut down. Then you got drugs like opioids. And guess what also? We make a natural opioid in our body called dynorphin here. And as you can see there, it's going to shut you down. And dynorphin makes you feel negative, okay? It's a profound sense of unease and dissatisfaction and negative emotion. So we've got to really start thinking about changing our mindset as well. But once you get the stress out of the body and testosterone comes up in free T, it makes everything easier. You got more motivation, you got more energy, working out in the gym's a lot easier, you got better cognition. And then right down the bottom here, you've got hyperglycemia. So when it's too high, your blood sugar. So when you're up and you're down all day long with your blood sugar, not only is it causing plaque in the arteries to build up, but it's also shutting you down. And this is what is happening to a lot of people. And again, it's called hypo and hyperglycemia there. So we really need to pay attention. Now, this is what increases testosterone production in men. So the mechanism by which this happens is LH. Now, remember the pulse generator, the gonadotropin releasing hormone system, pulse generator every 2 to 3 hours. So we've got to optimize this son of a bitch. We've got to keep this flowing. We've got to keep this working. And then we have to increase healthy levels of cholesterol to the testes, not this oxidized small dense crap that our body can't use. Then we have to reduce oxidative stress, or we can see what's starting to cause that oxidative stress and lipid peroxidation. Then also, and I'm going to show you how to do this towards the end, enhance the activity of the antioxidant enzymes and normalize blood glucose. So you can see how it's all starting to tie in together. Then you've got to increase blood flow, which is all about endothelial function. So recall earlier I spoke about homocysteine. It screws up the endothelium and also it lowers nitric oxide. So nitric oxide causes vasodilation, which is great blood flow to the testes and to our brain and all our organs. And then we can increase testicular weight. So keep the testes healthy and also recycle testosterone receptors. So we can kind of start to piece together the actual root cause as it was taught to me, which is oxidative stress and inflammation. A fantastic book, Legends, that you can pick up is from Nathan S. Bryant, PhD. It's all about nitric oxide. So you see this plaque in the arteries there? Well, let's read an excerpt from his book. This single molecule, which is NO, nitric oxide, remember, oxidative stress is going to tank that. Blood sugar is going to tank that when it's up and down, and homocysteine is going to tank that. This single molecule can prevent high blood pressure, hypertension, combat disease that damages your heart, brain, kidneys, keeps your arteries young and flexible, prevent, slow, and even reverse the buildup of this plaque right here. So if you've got a healthy system, you've got oxidative stress attenuated, there's no reason you can't keep this pulse generator open. And another way that you can increase nitric oxide production is to become a nose breather, because you can create sixfold more nitric oxide when you breathe through your nose. So it's absolutely critical that we get our endothelials working and pumping out nitric oxide there. And another thing that nitric oxide also does, especially in the nose there, it filters the air from toxins and bacteria. So it helps your arteries relax and expand. It kills bacteria and cancer cells, and it helps brain cells communicate with each other. So it does a lot more than that. But a lot of people are missing out on nitric oxide. You know, simple things like elevations in homocysteine and dysregulated blood glucose. So again, just for the sake of emphasis here, it's not just homocysteine, but it's all your labs. And uric acid is another one. So basically, it's inhibiting your endothelials from functioning optimally, and it's going to lower nitric oxide. So your blood pressure goes up, and then they prescribe you big pharma drugs to fix a nitric oxide problem. So how can we start to optimize blood sugar and have it more even instead of these big ups and downs? So what you see on screen there is pretty important. This here is with people that had pre-diabetes, insulin resistance. And according to the system, if you're fasting insulin, so you need to get this checked on a lab. And I've got more information about that in the caption below. They say between 2.6 and 24.9. You're good. You're fucking fantastic. But functional medicine, if you want to get optimized, they suggest between 2 and 5. Can you see the big juxtaposition there? Now, this study, I'll walk you through it. This was done with people with pre-diabetes, and their fasting insulin was, probably about 160. So 160 here is about 22 when you convert it back to these units of measurement there. So they were very close to being over with 25 and above and having full-blown type 2 diabetes. So they were nearly there. So what they did is they got them to just change the order in which they ate their food. So the first part of the experiment was carbs first, then protein and veg. And this is blood glucose. You can see it rise sharply and come crashing back down along with insulin. Big rise and fall. They kind of follow each other. The next one was protein and veg together, then carbohydrates. So in the blue line there, it's pretty stable blood glucose. However, the insulin was still up a bit too high. Now, that's beneficial if you're a bodybuilder and you want to push it up a bit higher. But when you're trying to get insulin sensitivity back, it's not so good. The final part of the experiment is they did vegetables first, then protein, then carb. And the important thing is when you're getting insulin sensitivity back is insulin. The less insulin you make while you're trying to regain insulin sensitivity, that's a long step in the right direction. So if you just start to think about changing the order in which you eat your foods and also picking up this book from Dr. James Nicolantonio, I believe you're a long step in the right direction in fixing your blood sugar issues and your gut health. I can't emphasize gut health enough. When I went through my course in nutrition, I learned all about the gut, and I'm going to show you what you need to do towards the end about how to fix your gut, because it is absolutely, and I mean absolutely, foundational. So what we've covered so far is basically homocysteine, just one blood lab. So you got to get them checked. There's information in the caption below, and trying to get your blood sugar stable again and get insulin sensitivity back. And also, when I was going through my course in nutrition there, the functional doctor said HIIT cardio in the morning is really beneficial for that. But, if you've got, if you know in your heart that you've got a weak heart, get a clearance by your doctor, because, you could be at a place right now where you've got a lot of damage to the endothelium and a lot of plaque in the arteries, and that can, all that shear force and the blood's rushing really hard, it can knock off a bit of that plaque and you can stroke out and have a heart attack. So, go and get a clearance from your doctor before you do any kind of HIIT cardio. This is one of the biggest things you need to get checked in your labs. This is absolutely no joke. I'll play the video, then I'll walk you through what you need to do.
Now, when you have so much iron in circulation, the plasma iron binding protein, the transport called transferrin, becomes saturated. And when this happens, iron begins binding to other things such as albumin, citrate, acetate. And this iron is referred to non-transferrin bound iron. And when this happens, cells will take up this non-transferrin bound iron into the liver, for example, the heart, the pituitary glands, the joints, the pancreas, as well as the gonads. And here they undergo biochemical reactions, which creates reactive oxygen species, which in turn causes tissue damage, inflammation, and fibrosis. So for example, in the liver, it can cause cirrhosis. As well, it increases the risk of hepatocellular carcinoma. In the heart, it can cause restrictive or dilated cardiomyopathy as well as arrhythmia. In the joints, it causes arthritis. In the pituitary glands, when you have iron depositing here, it can cause secondary hypothyroidism or secondary hypogonadism. In the pancreas, the deposition of iron can cause diabetes mellitus. In the gonads, it can cause testicular atrophy, amongst many other things.
So I'll show you how to get this problem solved, and it's got massive bonuses to it too for your health. So we're talking arthritis, all of those issues. It attacks the pituitary, it attacks the ball sac, the heart, the liver, the pancreas. It's very well researched now. Now, the biggest problem when you get your labs done through a standard physician there, this is the reference range. It's not their fault. 30 and 400 for ferritin. So this is a store of iron in your organs, the testes, the brain, the heart, everything. Functional medicine now recognizes that we need to get it between 50 and 100. And I'll show you how to solve this problem in a moment. But you caught what he said there, reactive oxygen species. So for the sake of emphasis.
As well as the gonads. And here they undergo biochemical reactions, which creates reactive oxygen species, which in turn causes tissue damage, inflammation, and fibrosis.
Tissue damage, inflammation, and fibrosis there. So you're damaging your arteries, your vessels, the endothelium, your cholesterol, your tissues, your organs. So that iron overload just accelerates that. It's like throwing gasoline onto a fire. So the easy way to solve this problem, and it really impacts testosterone. This is iron overload here. Results from 63% decreased testosterone production and testicular atrophy. Testicular atrophy, it's damaging your cholesterol, small, dense, oxidized cholesterol, which you can't use. It's damaging tissues. So very simple solution, you donate blood. And when you donate blood, you've got three pretty cool things that happen. It decreases oxidative stress by elevating antioxidant enzymes. So if you want to increase your testosterone, you have to enhance the activity of the antioxidant enzymes. Pretty simple solution there. And it also enhances the endothelial function, so better nitric oxide production, better blood flow straight from the get-go. So really important to donate blood there to bring the iron stores down, the ferritin down. It happens very quickly. So I've seen some guys that have been over 1,000. And most of the guys that we check, 90%, over 200 now, 90% have high ferritin. And what I classify as high is over 150. So they're over that 150 there. So slowly causing all that damage. And simple solution, you donate blood, you've got all of these benefits and you're saving lives. I'll give you a bonus here today, because if you've got good serum testosterone, but your free T is still low, more than likely you've got elevations in SHBG. And I'll talk about where they should be to get optimal ranges of SHBG. Now, why is it a problem? Well, every 2 to 3 hours, you're making ferritin. It's been sucked up onto this boat here. It's been bound to SHBG. So it's inactive. Like you can still use it, but it's not free. You can't use it when you want to use it. So we got to fix that problem. So what we need to do is, again, iron overload, elevations in ferritin, cause elevations in SHBG. Now, the next thing that will push up SHBG is chronic low insulin. And we see this, like I have seen this in myself when I did keto for 2 years there. My SHBG was always like 70 or 80, and I could never understand why my free T was down, my serum was okay. And I'm like, shit, what's going on here? And then I started to look through the scientific literature and speak to experts in hormones. So when you've got chronic low insulin, you make a lot of SHBG. Why? Because insulin, when it comes up to healthy levels, it shuts down hepatic production of SHBG. Now, another important thing to understand about SHBG is it's got a long half-life, 7 days. That means it takes a full 14 days of nice rises and fall in insulin, healthy levels of insulin, to bring it back down from, say, 70 to the butter zone here, between 20 and 40. Now, genetically, I produce more SHBG than normal, and because I've optimized all of this, my SHBG sits around about 30. It fluctuates a little bit up and a little bit down from 30 there, but that's about the average there. So what that means is once you get your insulin sensitivity back and your SHBG is kind of crap, this doesn't happen in all people who do keto or carnivore, but it happens in some of them, especially me and a lot of the clients that I help. You have to reintroduce carbohydrates. So you need a nice steady rise in blood glucose and also insulin. And if you recall what I talked about earlier with the glucose and also insulin there, you can see that when you have nice rises and falls in glucose, you'll have nice rises and fall in insulin. So that transient rise in insulin will shut down SHBG. Then over 14 days, your levels should come down to the butter zone there between 20 and 40. So if you're having elevations in SHBG, let's just go back to that page there. Donate blood, introduce carbohydrates. And another one you can get checked is if you got high T4. So that means you've got thyroid issues. So T4 is the inactive form of thyroid hormone. It has to be converted to T3, the active form. So if your T4 is up and your T3 is down, you've got some downstream issues there. It could be a sick gut. It could be lots of different things. Or you could have too much estrogen. So if your estrogen is really high, then you'll also have elevations in SHBG. So that's how you're going to start to think through this problem. So basically, if you get the stress out of the body and you start reintroducing carbohydrates, if your SHBG is an issue, you should have a lot of fucking free T to build muscle, to lower fear and anxiety, to increase motivation, confidence, increase brain function, and will help you become the man that you were born to be. Now, one final thing before I talk about the V8 diagnostic there, we want to also protect the endothelium. So Matthew Walker here, when you got elevations in glucose and insulin, it largely shuts down growth hormone. And as Dr. Matthew Walker said, without growth hormone repairing the endothelium, remember the endothelium there? We need to repair that for nitric oxide production and integrity of our vasculature system. They're shorn and stripped of their integrity. Vessels rupture, heart attack and stroke become very common. So now you can clearly see that insulin and glucose, when it's dysregulated, is a big problem. And growth hormone does these important things. Number one, it helps you get lean. It potently stimulates the release of free fatty acid from your fat cells here. Number two, it also builds muscle alongside testosterone, free T. And number three, it repairs the tissues and the organs like the brain, the heart, the blood vessels, again, the endothelium, the ovaries if you're a lady, the ball sac, the testes if you're a man, the intestines and the gut, the kidneys, the muscle, including the smooth muscle of the penis, the bone marrow, so you've got a healthy immune system, the cartilage so your joints don't ache, the liver and the central nervous system. So you can really start to understand now that the oxidative stress and the dysregulations in homocysteine, in iron and glucose and insulin is a big problem for a lot of different things, legends. All right, we are at the solution part of this. So you've basically what I showed you earlier is there's a few of the problems. Now, we've got to create a framework, and the only way to create a framework is to get the right labs checked and then work towards getting an optimal range. And there's information below about how to do that. But what I'll do now is just quickly walk you through that. So this is a PDF that you can download. So it just gives you an overview about the issues with the current system and the labs that they're checking. It's not enough, and they're not getting the labs. They're not informing you of the optimal ranges. Like we talked about homocysteine, we talked about ferritin. So this is what the functional doctors recommend based on a lot of data, getting people back to health, no meds, back to health. So right down the bottom, I'll just show you the labs that we recommend. Come down, scroll down. I'm getting there. So there's a bit of information here. There's about 26 pages. So here it is here. So this is the recommended blood labs. So it's all there. You can download that, print it all off. And this is what we call the V8 diagnostic mental prep. So before you get your labs checked, you got to follow this, because an emotional event or poor sleep can skew the results and you'll panic. So make sure you read through this. There's only 5 steps to read through there, and it just shows you how to prepare for your labs, and all that information is in there and what are the optimal ranges. So get that download. Now, of course, the rest of the things that are going to cause health problems and autoimmune diseases and, you not becoming the person you want to be to kick ass in life, we've also got negative emotions. And the paradox is that pulse generator, free T is up, you feel good, right? When you've got free T coursing through your vein at healthy levels, it lowers fear and anxiety and increases energy and motivation and enthusiasm, and you just feel so much different. And then poor sleep. Like a lot of people have sleep apnea. That's because down here they're a mouth breather. So you got to become a nose breather. And I've spoken about this, if you go back through my YouTube, since 2018, your omega-3 index. Dr. Rhonda Patrick has spoken about it so many times here on YouTube. It increases muscle protein synthesis. She interviewed a PhD that showed the data, clinical trials. It increases brain function. It lowers inflammation. It is super important to get it checked. I've got information below about how to do that. Now, if you've got a higher body fat level, you're going to have more aromatase. So you're going to be wasting your free T turn to estrogen. So you've got to drop the body fat. And then what we've talked about here today is how to optimize free T. So we've already covered that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about autoimmune disease here and how to fix that with gut health and food sensitivities. Then, of course, poor kidney and liver health, which really goes back to the gut. And then I've already mentioned that. If you're a mouth breather, big problem. And then if you got a varicocele, right, so your testes overheat, you don't produce a lot of testosterone, or you don't have a lot of fertility there, or you could have testicular damage because of high blood pressure, which will also cause a varicocele. And that could be iron overload as well, all the chemicals. And then if you've abused steroids, that can be a bit of an issue. Now, these ones here are the light clamps, and I've spoken about those on previous videos. You just stop doing this shit, right? It's as simple as that. Gut health, I'll circle back to it. Let's just start here with one food sensitivities. So we've tested over 200 people with their DNA blueprint, and 65% of people are sensitive to lectins. Right? Listen to this.
The lectin is the big one. That's a 4-fold higher risk of heart disease, even as a plus minus, the SELE.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So lectins are going to trigger a lot of damage to the arteries and damage to the gut. I would recommend avoiding grains.
Yeah.
Grains are the major source of lectins.
Yeah.
And his gut's very sensitive to grains also with the gluten. And he's got a thyroid gene that comes up later with gluten as well. So I would say just take off the grains,
A full 65%, and we're recommended to eat lots of healthy grains. Now, fair enough, some people can eat this. Some people can't. 4-fold increased risk of heart disease. And again, some people can eat this. It can destroy your gut. It can tap out your thyroid. So wouldn't you want to know? So that's huge. Now, this is my sensitivity. I'm sensitive to nightshades and plant insecticides. So it makes a lot of sense to me because when I was a teenager, I craved steak and eggs. That's basically what I lived on. And if I eat a lot of nightshades and plant insecticides, so plants have their own chemicals, I don't detox them very well. So they build up and I fucking sink like the Titanic. And the older you get, the worse this becomes. And it causes a lot of fatigue, brain fog. It destroys your gut, lowers your testosterone. Now, another important thing to understand is that supplements like ashwagandha are nightshades. So if I take ashwagandha, it crushes me. And you've heard a lot of people speak, so highly of ashwagandha. The ginkgo is another one. There's lots of supplements that are nightshades. So you might have supplemented ashwagandha. You're like, oh, fuck, I don't feel any good. That could be you. And then, of course, some people have really poor antioxidant defenses on one of their genes called oxide dismutase 2. And this is what takes care of ROS, reactive oxygen species. And we talked about that earlier. Now, iron overload causes a lot of ROS, as you heard. Now, if you've got this gene here, listen carefully to this.
Heart disease. Yeah. So this one gene, there's really the two genes here, but the SOD2 gene is not a risk unless her ferritin is high. But if her ferritin is high, this gene gives her a 10-fold higher risk of heart disease, which is super high risk.
10-fold, yeah.
We want that to be 0-fold. So you got to make sure the ferritin is between 50 and 100, not just 50 to 500 or some kind of crazy nonsense.
Yeah.
Has to be optimal, not just normal on this one.
10-fold increased risk of heart disease. So it's causing, let's just go back up here, 10-fold increase in ROS there, reactive oxygen species. And again,
as well as the gonads. And here they undergo biochemical reactions, which creates reactive oxygen species, which in turn causes tissue damage, inflammation, and fibrosis. So for example,
so absolutely huge, 10-fold increased risk of heart disease, but tissue damage absolutely everywhere. So your genes really, if you don't understand your genes, you could be given this diet or another diet. And that's when I went through my certificate in nutrition. We discussed this, like methylation. Some people are poor methylators. Some people have got a slow COMT gene, and we're all different. And I'm going to do another video all about food sensitivities. But for now, let's just stick to what we got here. So gut health, back up here. And this is just unbelievable. So you got a gut-brain axis. Now we're talking stress, anxiety, depression, IBS, schizophrenia, cognitive decline, autism, brain fog, memory issues, cognitive decline. Do you get the picture there? Gut health. You've got in your gut 600 fucking million neurons. You've got an enteric nervous system, and it's 9 messages to the brain and 1 message from the brain back down to the gut. 9-to-1 ratio. The gut's always talking to your brain there. Then you've got a gut endocrine axis. So all of your hormones, gut, endocrine axis, heart, cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis, thrombosis, hypertension, high blood pressure, lung, obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma, allergies, rhinitis, liver, right? Your liver detoxes chemicals, heavy metals, estrogens, pancreas. So you can have pancreatitis. So you can't digest your food. Then you get diabetes and type 1 diabetes. Then gut, bone and joint access, muscle. So you can't grow your muscles if your gut is sick. You're working hard in the gym, but you can't pack on the muscle. Skin, acne, cirrhosis, atopic dermatitis, wrinkles, and accelerated skin aging. To hell with that. The gonads, the testes for dudes, the ovaries for ladies, kidneys, bladder, like you could have frequent frequent stops to the bathroom. You could be, the flow's not very good. You could have a bit of pain. It's all related to the gut. So we got to fix the gut. So on the next video, when I went through my certificate in nutrition, I also took an extra course by this legend here. He's got a PhD, DHSC, DCMS, super smart dude. And we got to go from north to south. Starts with the mouth, digestion, the intestines, and then the colon. And it's a 3-phase, 1-2-phase process. And I've got information about the general idea of what you need to do to fix your gut. In about 1 week, I'll have another video on how to heal the gut. All right. So if you found this video helpful, help me out, share, like, and drop a comment below. That's going to help me reach more people so we can start getting ourselves back in the game, legends. So remember, what we got to think about is this gonadotropin releasing hormone system's got a pulse generator, 2 to 3 hours, releases pulses of LH and FSH to the testes to make testosterone and sperm. If you got ROS, And we've spoken about Ross today, reactive oxygen species, infection, opioids. So whether you take them or your body's making opioids like dynorphin, which makes you feel negative, we're shut down. Stress hormones will shut you down. High glucose and insulin will shut you down. Leptin resistance, inflammation, too much estrogen. But what we want, and I'm going to change the color of the pen here, is testosterone to shut us down when it gets to high optimal. So that's it. If you've enjoyed this, give it a share, give it a like, and I'll see you the next video.